Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tear down a term you've probably heard a million times, working capital. But let's ditch the dusty accounting textbook definition, okay? We're going to look at this the way a top consultant would, as a super powerful tool for checking the real, up-to-the-minute pulse of any business.
So let me ask you this right off the bat. Can a company that's profitable, making money on paper, actually go bankrupt? The answer is a huge, resounding yes. And the reason why is exactly what we're talking about today. See, there's a massive difference between showing a profit and having cold, hard cash in the bank to pay your bills. And managing that gap? Well, that's the art and science of working capital.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll talk about why working capital is basically a vital sign for a business. Then we'll get into the framework, the Real Consultant's Toolkit, breaking down assets and liabilities. And then, the most important part, we'll figure out what the results actually mean and how to turn all that insight into a real strategy.
All right, first things first. Profit is great, don't get me wrong. It tells you if your business idea is working in the long run. But you know what it doesn't tell you? If you're going to be able to keep the lights on next Tuesday. Survival, in the short term, is all about financial health, your ability to pay what you owe right now.
And this is exactly where working capital comes into play. You should really think of it like a company's financial blood pressure. It's a direct snapshot of its liquidity, basically how quickly it can get its hands on cash. It also tells you a ton about how efficient the company is, how well it's managing the money flowing in and out. It's pretty much the clearest signal you can get of its short-term health.
Okay, so let's build the main tool we're going to use for this analysis. To really get what's going on with a business's health, we need a simple but really powerful framework. And this is ground zero for any serious financial checkup.
So here it is, the official definition. Working capital is just the difference between what a company owns in the short term and what it owes in the short term. And that word current is super important. In the world of finance, current almost always means within the next year or less. And this simple formula is the heart of everything. Current assets minus current liabilities. This is our North Star for this whole diagnosis. Every single thing we can do to make a company healthier in the short term comes right back to one of these two sides of the equation.
Now here's where we really start thinking like a consultant. We're looking at this through a classic framework called MEIS. It's a fancy acronym that just means mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. In plain English, it means we've broken everything down into distinct buckets, and together they give us the whole picture. No overlaps, nothing left out. On the left, you've got your resources. On the right, your obligations. These are the levers we can pull.
Okay, let's dive into that first column of our MEIS framework, current assets. We're not just going to look at these as numbers on a spreadsheet. A consultant sees each one of these as a strategic choice that has real effects on a company's cash. So let's break them down real quick. Cash is, cash. It's king for a reason. Accounts receivable. That's the money your customers still owe you. Think of them as a stack of IOUs. Then there's inventory. That's all your unsold stuff, from raw materials to finished products sitting in a warehouse. And finally, prepaid expenses, stuff you paid for in advance, like your insurance policy.
And this quote right here gets to a super critical point. It's not just about how much you have in assets, it's about the quality of those assets. I mean, think about it. $1 million in cash is not the same as $1 million of inventory that could go out of style, right? And it's definitely not the same as $1 million in receivables from customers who are notorious for paying late. If they don't pay you, that asset is just a fantasy, and you still can't pay your own bills.
All right, let's flip over to the other side of our framework. Now we're talking about current liabilities. These are all the bills and obligations that your assets have to cover, and soon. This is the stuff that has to get paid within the next year.
So what do we have here? Accounts payable, that's what you owe your suppliers. Wages payable is the money you owe your employees for the work they've already done. Then you've got the current portion of long-term debt, which is just any piece of a bigger loan that's due this year. And unearned revenue is a really interesting one. That's cash you got from a customer for a job you haven't finished yet. It's a liability because you still owe them the work. Getting a handle on these is just as crucial.
Okay, so we've looked at all the individual pieces. We have our assets, we have our liabilities. Now for the moment of truth. Let's put it all together and figure out what that final number actually tells us. This is where we stop just collecting data and start making a real diagnosis.
At a high level, it usually shakes out in one of two ways. Positive working capital is when your assets are bigger than your liabilities. That's generally good. It means you can pay your upcoming bills, and you probably have some breathing room to invest or handle a surprise. Negative working capital, on the other hand, is when your liabilities are bigger than your assets. That's a red flag. It's a warning light that the company might have a tough time paying its bills.
But And this is a big but, a super high working capital number isn't automatically a sign of a perfectly run company. In fact, it can signal inefficiency. Maybe it means you've got way too much cash just sitting around doing nothing instead of being invested for growth. Or it could mean your warehouse is packed with unsold products, and all that cash is literally just collecting dust. The goal is efficiency, not just having a big number.
Let's make this concrete with a quick look at Microsoft from their March 2024 numbers. First up, their total current assets. They were sitting on a massive $147 billion.
Okay, so what did they owe in the short term? Their current liabilities were about $118.5 billion.
So you do the simple math and you get a positive working capital of $28.5 billion. That is an incredibly strong position. But the real question is why? Well, think about it. Microsoft is a software company. They don't have billions tied up in physical inventory. Their assets are mostly cash and receivables. This giant cushion gives them amazing flexibility to invest, to buy other companies, or to just sail through a bad economy. That is what financial strength really looks like.
Now, before we go any further, just a quick reality check. This is a powerful metric, but it's not magic. First, remember, it's just a snapshot in time. These numbers are changing every single day. Second, like we said, the quality of the assets is everything. Third, things can lose value unexpectedly. And finally, you're trusting the accountants got it right. The formula is only as good as the numbers you put into it.
And that brings us to the final, and I think most useful, section. A diagnosis is great, but it's pretty useless without a plan. So how does a business actually improve its working capital? How do we take what we've learned and turn it into an action plan? Well, it really comes down to a clear, two-pronged attack that ties right back to our formula. On one side, you want to speed up your assets. Get customers to pay you faster. Get rid of slow-moving inventory to turn it back into cash. On the other side, you want to slow down your liabilities. Try to negotiate longer to pay your own suppliers. Keep a tight grip on spending. It's a constant balancing act between these two forces.
So here's the big takeaway. Working capital is not some passive number you look at once a quarter. It's an active, daily process. Managing it well is literally the difference between a business that's just scraping by and one that's stable, healthy, and ready to pounce on new opportunities. It's the absolute engine room of a company's finances.
So, we've walked through the whole consultant's framework for taking a company's financial temperature. The tool itself is simple, right? But the insights you can get from it are incredibly powerful. So I'll just leave you with this question. Now that you have the framework, what story do the numbers tell about your business, or maybe a company that you're watching?